The words here are getting a little bit harder, but don't let that intimidate you. Remember that sometimes the hard words and the choices don't matter. Just try to figure out what the relationship is based on the passage, and that might help you find the right answer. Let's just read it. While scholars believe many Mesoamerican cities influenced each other, direct evidence of such influence is difficult to ascertain. So ascertain just means notice or figure out. So you could have probably gotten that from the word difficult, right? Evidence, difficult. Okay, keep it dumb. However, recent excavations in a sector of Tikal unearthed a citadel that shows blank Teotihuacan architecture. So it's hard to follow the sentence when they remove like prepositions like they did here. But okay, let's continue. Including a near replica means copy, of a famed Teotihuacan temple, providing tangible evidence, meaning real evidence, of outside influence in portions of Tikal. So it started out saying that we don't know how these things are related, but now we have evidence that they are. So the excavations in Tikal show, unearthed a citadel that shows, I don't know, like a replica of, like a near replica. So replication, if we're going to be really like stealing it, replication of the architecture in Teotihuacan. So like that, if I'm being lazy, that's kind of what I'm going to do. I know that replication is kind of a hard word for most people, but you don't need to have a good vocabulary to steal words. If you knew what replica meant, you kind of probably knew we needed something like that in the blank. So two things kind of stand out to me right away as being wrong. Precursor means something comes before something else. So this is a time word. But notice here, they're not saying one thing came before the other, right? There's influence involved, but it's if the thing in Tikal was a precursor, or let's just do Mexico and Guatemala. If the thing in Guatemala was a precursor of Mexico, then how could it be a replica of something in Mexico, right? Because precursor means Guatemala first, okay? Guatemala first. It's a precursor means that comes before the Mexico thing. But then if the Guatemala thing came first, it cannot be copying something that hasn't happened yet. So this word gets the order wrong. But I really want to emphasize that that's not so much my problem. It's more that like I'm not interested in the timing of these two things. The rest of the passage is saying that they are similar to each other. I don't care about the order of that. That's just not part of this. So I'm not interested in it. Now D, you have to know what this word means to confidently cross it out, but animosities means like hatreds. So how does a building hate another building? It doesn't even make any sense. So this word makes no sense at all. This is a very common reason why answers that have hard words in them end up being wrong, is that if you know what the definition of the hard word is, it literally just doesn't even make sense. So learn more words and more choices will get crossed out. Now, the answer is C because it's simpler. Commonalities just means similarities. So similarities is kind of perfect when we talk about replica, something being a copy, right? So they're saying they're similar. Now, it's not a perfect copy, right? It's a near replica. So it's not to say that it's exactly the same, but that hits our main idea. Someone could twist the word refinements into kind of the same thing and say, well, to refine something means to improve, to make it better. So you could say, okay, that the Mexico thing, not only did they copy it in Guatemala, but they made it better. They refined this design and improved it in some way. The way it looks, the way it stands, its integrity, its structural integrity, whatever. But you don't have that. That's not in the passage. They're not saying that they took it and made it better. They're just saying that they took it. It's a near replica. So this is a very positive word. This is a very neutral word. The rest of this passage is very neutral. So this is where connotations can help us, even when there really isn't one. A is a very positive thing, and we don't really have that strong positive connotation in other places in the passage to justify that. It's one thing if the passage was positive, and then we ended up picking a neutral word. That's a very common SAT move, where we have some very detailed answer or something, idea in the passage, but then of course what the SAT loves to do is it strips it down, removes all those details so that we are having a harder time noticing the connection, but a weak, vague answer is right, even when the passage is more detailed, has a stronger connotation, whatever it may be. But the reverse does not really happen. It's not really the case that we have a very weak, vague passage without a connotation, and then we use the answer to add that in. We don't really want to add anything to what the passage is saying. We can subtract, but we really can't add. So if you picked A, it's basically because you made an assumption. And we do not have any evidence of that assumption. We do not know that the Guatemala temple is better than the Mexico temple. We just know that they're similar, so we have to pick the word that doesn't add anything else and just kind of keeps it as vague and weak as possible, and that is choice C. It's a really good question for that because it kind of shows us how the SAT can kind of manipulate us sometimes, but we still follow the same rules as always. There is clear evidence in this passage for what we want, and I did just kind of copy a definition that was given to me later on and use that in the blank.